My name is Connor Briggs. I'm 43 years old, and until recently I was the IT systems director at Oakridge Components, a mid-sized electronics manufacturer in Columbus, Ohio. Not flashy, not Fortune 500, but real work. We supplied circuit boards to aerospace firms, government contractors, even hospitals. For 12 years, I made sure every system from production tracking to inventory control ran without hiccups. I designed the core architecture of our logistics software, trained half the staff myself, and put out fires daily before they became infernos. So when the CEO invited me to lunch just to catch up, I should have known. We met at DeLuca's on the River White Napkins overpriced steak, the kind of place where you don't go unless you're celebrating or firing someone. "Connor, I want to thank you for everything," said Maxwell Denton, the CEO. "But we're moving in a new direction." I kept my face neutral. I'd heard this line before, just never from someone who owed their digital backbone to me. "The board thinks it's time we bring in someone with a younger mindset. Fresh energy, a modern approach. Translation cheaper, more obedient, and preferably related to someone on the board." Turns out that someone was Julian Trent Denton's godson. Fresh out of Stanford with a cybersecurity degree and a LinkedIn full of buzzwords. My replacement. I took a sip of water. "Who's handling the transition?" I asked casually. Maxwell looked relieved I wasn't causing a scene. "We'd like you to work with Julian for the next 6 weeks. Get him up to speed." Smooth handover. I smiled. 6 weeks generous? Especially for a guy they'd already cut out of the budget meetings. Back at my office, my network permissions were already flagged as limited. My credentials were quietly downgraded from full admin to supervisor level. Subtle, but I noticed. And I wasn't surprised. Because 3 months earlier, I'd spotted some strange log entries, unauthorized access attempts from inside the executive suite. Someone trying to download my personal documentation libraries, my code bases, even my proprietary automation scripts. They weren't just replacing me. They were stealing from me. And that's when I quietly started planning my exit. I didn't get angry. I got careful. I went home that night, poured myself a coffee, and opened the encrypted backups I'd kept over the years. Not company files, my files. Things I'd built long before Oakridge hired me. Tools I'd brought in to solve problems when no one else had answers. A lightweight logistics engine I called PathStream. It was the heartbeat of our inventory movement, and while Oakridge had integrated it into their operations, I never signed over full ownership. That was about to matter. I'd moved to Columbus from Chicago after my wife left. Divorce papers on the kitchen table. "We want different futures," she'd said. Cold, clean, like a business transaction. I crashed with my cousin for a few months freelanced security audits until Oakridge came calling. Their IT systems were a disaster, network-wide lag phishing issues, outdated protocols. I rebuilt the whole thing in 18 months. Nobody said thank you. But nobody dared question me either. Until now. The morning after the lunch, I met with Carmen Ruiz, my lead systems engineer. Smart. Tough. She'd been with me for 5 years. "They're cutting you out," she asked when I told her. I nodded. She closed her laptop without a word. "You've got a plan." "I've got the blueprint," I said. "Then I'm in," she replied. "Just say when." That was all I needed. By Friday, I'd confirmed that Julian had been given back-end access 3 weeks before my lunch with Maxwell. My code documentation was being quietly downloaded and archived externally. PathStream was listed in internal files as fully proprietary to Oakridge, a lie. I still had the original source code dated months before I joined Oakridge. along with emails from their first CTO explicitly acknowledging it was licensed, not owned. Use it however you need, I'd written. But ownership remains with me unless purchased in writing. No such purchase ever happened. Saturday morning, I called Ben Carver, my old friend turned intellectual property attorney. He owed me for helping him out of a ransomware nightmare 5 years ago. I sent him everything: emails, code, timestamps, contracts. He called back that evening. Connor, this is solid. If they try to claim ownership of PathStream, we can sue and win. Can we stop them from using it at all? Absolutely, he said. But be smart. Don't trigger anything yet. Let them walk into it first. That night, I sat in my quiet apartment, staring at the server logs. Julian was downloading version 6.1 of PathStream, the one with the self-check mechanism I'd built in but never documented. The one that would shut down automatically if the license wasn't validated in 60 days. They had no idea. I started coming in earlier, staying later, smiling more. Let them think I'd accepted my fate. Let Julian think I was playing nice. In reality, I was preparing a quiet exodus code by code, file by file. Every undocumented feature I'd ever added to PathStream. Every logic gate, every encrypted safety net. I documented them on a personal drive not to destroy the system, but to defend it. Julian started holding team meetings without inviting me, but Carmen always slipped me the notes afterward. He's asking the junior devs how to rewrite PathStream from scratch, she whispered one day. Told them your version is too complex. Of course he did, I said, smiling thinly. That's what happens when people mistake simple looking for simple built. He also started sending client-facing documentation to external auditors, trying to show off what he thought he was building. Only problem was, he didn't understand the engine. He was copying a masterpiece without knowing the brushstrokes. The final straw came when I received an email from my own system. One of the automated threat monitors I'd written pinged me late at night. Unauthorized data replication attempt detected. I checked the logs. Julian had cloned the entire PathStream module to a third-party server. No encryption, no acknowledgement, no license tag. This wasn't just corporate betrayal anymore. It was theft. I called Ben again. They're pushing PathStream to a vendor server unlicensed. Then we send them a letter, he said. A cease and desist citing IP theft. But not yet. Why not, I asked. Because we want them to go deeper. Use it in production. Make it visible. The bigger the violation, the harder it hits. I nodded. We were building a trap and they were walking right into it. 2 weeks later, the company held their quarterly all-hands meeting. I sat in the back, quiet. Julian stood at the podium beside Maxwell, all smiles. We're entering a new era, Julian said, with modernized systems, faster performance, and a roadmap that'll put Oakridge ahead of the curve. They presented PathStream as a company-owned innovation. No mention of me, no mention of its origin. I caught Carmen's eye. Her jaw was clenched so tight I thought she might bite through her lip. They just hung themselves, she muttered under her breath. I walked out of that meeting, sat down at my desk, and opened the PathStream License Manager. 60 days. That's how long they had before the embedded token expired and the core modules deactivated themselves gracefully without damage, but decisively. Ben had already drafted the new licensing terms. All I had to do was wait. It happened on a Monday. Of course it did. Mondays were when the production servers carried the heaviest load, when the sales teams logged in first, when client-side dashboards pulled in real-time metrics. At 9:01 a.m., the first error messages rolled in. PathStream license expired. Contact the developer. Then another. And another. Within 15 minutes, half the operations platform had frozen. Critical automation's data flows, even supplier syncs dead. Carmen texted me from the floor. "What did you do?" I replied. I reminded them who built the engine. By 10:00 a.m., I had 3 missed calls from Maxwell's assistant. At 10:22, a fourth came in, this time from Julian himself. I let it ring. A few minutes later, my lawyer Ben called. Calm collected. They're rattled. Their legal team finally read the clause. Clause 9(2). I said, revocable use of non-exclusive licensed proprietary framework in absence of a binding transfer agreement. Exactly. We're covered. They're the ones exposed. By lunchtime, I was sitting in a private meeting room across town, suit pressed, laptop open, coffee untouched. Julian walked in looking like someone had ripped his safety net in half. Maxwell followed, expression unreadable, trailed by a third man I didn't recognize, probably legal. They didn't sit. I did. What's the meaning of this? Connor. Maxwell started tone brittle. The system you're using, PathStream, is proprietary, I said evenly. Developed by me, licensed to Oakridge under a lapsed agreement. That's semantics, Julian snapped. You built it while employed here. Ben, sitting beside me, calmly flipped open a binder. Highlighted text. Time-stamped versions. Git commits traced to a private repo I'd started 6 months before Oakridge even hired me. The framework predates Connor's employment, Ben said. You were given a usage license. It expired. Julian looked ready to explode. Maxwell raised a hand. What do you want? 3 things, I replied. 1. A new licensing agreement for continued use, $250,000 annual. 2. A full statement crediting me as the system's architect. 3. Non-disparagement clauses for both parties. I go quietly. You save face. They stalled for a day. Then Tuesday morning, their top client, Redbridge Logistics, called to complain about a critical delay. A cascading failure. The entire supply chain integration had collapsed because PathStream wasn't running. By Wednesday afternoon, they signed everything. When the funds hit my account, I didn't celebrate. I just walked out of the building with a small box of things, same as so many betrayed professionals before me. But this time, I didn't leave empty-handed. I left with leverage. I left with legacy. I left with the understanding that knowing your value isn't arrogance, it's survival. 3 weeks after the licensing agreement was signed, I signed something else, a lease on a warehouse unit just outside of Madison. Nothing fancy. Bare walls, high ceilings, one dusty skylight. But it was mine. The name on the paperwork, Keystone Systems. A consulting firm. A startup, maybe. But really it was a promise that the systems I built wouldn't be owned by people who never respected how they worked. Luis was the first to join me. He showed up with a used laptop, a half-eaten sandwich, and an idea for a new diagnostic layer we'd never been allowed to build at Oakridge. So we just get to do it our way now. From scratch, I said. No politics. Just performance. Then came Carmen, burnt out from Julian's endless attempts to streamline operations by cutting heads instead of fixing flaws. Then Greg from finance, quiet, brilliant, and furious about how the board had sold us all out. Within 6 months, we had 5 clients. Mid-sized logistics companies that had once envied Oakridge's digital edge, now signing contracts with the very people who made it possible. The edge wasn't Oakridge's. It had always been ours. I got a call from TechVerse, a large manufacturing analytics firm in Chicago. They'd heard about what happened. "We're looking for integration experts," the VP said. "The kind who don't just talk, but actually build." "I have a team," I replied, "and we don't miss deadlines." 2 months later, I walked past Oakridge's old headquarters for the first time since my exit. The glass lobby looked the same, but I noticed the monitors were off. Vanessa texted me the next day. "Guess who's transitioning to new opportunities? Julian and Maxwell. Shareholders ousted them both. Too much fallout." I didn't reply, not out of bitterness, because it no longer mattered. We'd moved on. And every day I watched something new take shape. Systems crafted by people who cared, platforms built to solve real problems, not inflate stock value. The tech industry didn't need more CEOs with buzzwords. It needed builders, people like us. 1 year later, I stood on the deck of a small lake cabin. I'd finally bought something I used to dream about during my loneliest nights at Oakridge. The water was still. The sun dipped low. I opened my laptop and checked the dashboard. Keystone was profitable. Our systems were stable. Our team was growing. And I was finally at peace.